Yo, what's up, Shinobi fam? It's Legacy Shinobi back with another epic What If to fire up your imaginations. This time, we're diving into a blazing crossover you don't want to miss. What if Naruto was the reincarnation of Genryūsai Shigekuni Yamamoto? In this story, Naruto isn't just the Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails. He's the reincarnation of the legendary Captain Commander Yamamoto himself. Imagine Naruto wielding the overwhelming power of Ryujin, the oldest and most powerful flame Zanpakuto, and unleashing abilities that could turn entire battlefields into ash. With Yamamoto's wisdom and unmatched strength, Naruto becomes a force to be reckoned with, reshaping the shinobi world in ways no one could have imagined. So, if you're hyped for an explosive tale of fire, leadership, and unyielding will, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with your fellow anime lovers. Now, let's dive straight into this scorching crossover. As the upper part of his body, severed from the rest, fell to the ground, a single thought crossed his mind. I'm not dead yet. He was losing a lot of blood. He was sure. It was a miracle that he was still conscious at that point, but he couldn't and didn't want to give up. He had a duty to fulfill. His vision was blurred, and he didn't even feel anything anymore, but it didn't matter, because he was still alive. You're a fool. That calm and cold voice. He would remember it forever. Time has made you weak. That's why I never considered you as one of the war potentials. 1,000 years ago, you would have been at the top of the list, but by now you are just a shell of yourself. I'm not dead yet. His right arm moved with an unthinkable speed for someone reduced like him, but he still managed to grab his opponent's ankle, slowly starting to crush it with all the strength he had left. He didn't even notice the moment when his arm was cut cleanly at the elbow, making him completely limbless. He could still hear that voice. His enemy was in front of him, yet he could do nothing about it. After a few seconds, he saw a blue glow grow larger and more intense. Even in the state in which he was reduced, he could see that it was an attack. A very powerful attack against him. Is this my limit then? When the attack was close to destroying him, he finally closed his eyes, accepting the cold embrace of death. Oh, the irony! With a violent explosion, no trace of him remained. Only a broken and scorched sword was left as evidence of his loss. Flames of Duty. Chapter 1. Rebirth. You can open your eyes now. Genryūsai Shigekuni Yamamoto, former Captain Commander of the Genryūsai 13, suddenly opened his eyes, surprised by the voice he had just heard. Looking around, he realized he was inside an Oriental-style room, with a polished wooden table in front of him and only a large parchment hanging on the wall to his left, above which was the kanji for order. You look disoriented, but I think it's normal after all that's happened to you, said the other occupant of the room, currently sitting on the other side of the table, intent on pouring tea into 2 cups. However, I can tell you that after a few minutes, the feeling of nausea you may experience will disappear. Yamamoto shifted his gaze to the man who had just spoken, and his eyes widened in surprise. Ichibe Hyasub. What happened? Ichibe would have found it interesting to see the infamous Captain Commander of the Genryūsai 13 behave that way. However, he had a mission to accomplish, and little time was available. So he passed a cup full of tea to Yamamoto. Watch has happened. You fought him, or you fought against a Quincy that you thought was him. But when the real one appeared, he managed to defeat you and kill you in no time. This is what the Soul King told me. Yamamoto seemed surprised and distressed by the discovery, but managed to conceal his emotions by looking down, being surprised again to see that he had both arms now. Raising his left arm, he tried to move it and felt nothing strange, as if he had never lost it in the battle against Aizen. How? The Soul King, together with the intervention of the Zero Division, has succeeded in recreating your body and preserving your spirit. Explained Ichibe while sipping his cup of tea. Your death occurred recently, yesterday to be precise, so it was relatively easy. Why did the Soul King do it? He wants me to face Yhwach again? Asked Yamamoto, recovering the calmness for which he was known. If the answer to his question had been affirmative, he wouldn't have hesitated for a moment to face him again, because that was the Soul King's will, and he would not disappoint him. However, it seemed that his idea was wrong as Ichibe shook his head far from it. You are dead, Genryūsai. The Soul King has already made an exception to the rule to get you back, but not to face Yhwach again, but to solve another problem. A problem that could be as serious as our war against the Quincy's. Another problem? What problem could rival the current crisis? Tell me, what do you know about the Circle of Souls? Asked Ichibe in turn. That the Soul King is the one who regulates the flow of souls in the Soul Society. If he were not there, then our world, as well as the Hueco Mundo, the human world and others would be ruined. Ichibe nodded. That's true, but what you don't know is that the Soul King also manages other worlds than those known. In truth, he is not even the only existing Soul King. From what he told me, there are many others like him who reign on other worlds. Yamamoto looked at him with surprised eyes. From what I know, a world with few souls is managed by a Soul King. But once that world develops and souls increase, a new Soul King is assigned to that world, so as not to compromise the flow of souls among all the worlds. In these primitive worlds, a Shinigami or something similar is then assigned, so that all the creatures that pass through can find their way to the Circle of Souls. Obviously, every Shinigami can be different or change over time, obtaining powers, reputation, and appearance different from those like us. The fact that you're telling me all this, is it related to the job for which I was brought back to life? Asked Yamamoto now with calm eyes. Yes, that's the case. You must know that the Shinigami of this world is being controlled by humans and can no longer perform its duty, at least not completely. Said Ichibe, surprising the former Captain Commander. In very simple words, they are using that Shinigami to bring the dead back to life, including souls. Now Yamamoto was not only surprised, but also slightly worried that shouldn't be possible. Bringing the dead back to life is not such an amazing thing. Even I can do it in a sense, but also control the souls. It goes against all the rules of the cycle of rebirth. Nodded Ichibe, a soul that has already been reborn can no longer be controlled in any way. Yet these humans have managed to get around the problem. From what I learned, they are creating something like copies when they bring someone back to life. This is a threat to the entire circle of rebirth, especially if this technique were to be passed on for years to come. Yamamoto narrowed his eyes slightly before nodding. A soul takes time before being reborn. If humans had to go ahead with this system, no soul would leave that world anymore. Yes, that's a problem. Fortunately, it seems that not all humans are allies, so those unrelated to this system live and die without any interference, thus allowing the Shinigami of that world to take their souls. Ichibe was silent for a few seconds, and that's why you've been brought back to life. To solve this problem, a problem born in your original world. The old Shinigami looked at Ichibe with incredulous eyes. My original world? The commander of the Royal Guard nodded. Well, to say the true original world sounds bad and is incorrect. Previous world is more correct. As Genryūsai Shigekuni Yamamoto, you were born here in the Soul Society, so this is your world right now. But before you became what you are now, you were another person. A young human named Uzumaki Naruto. Uzumaki Naruto, the name did not ring any bell in his head. If you don't remember anything, it is more than normal. Whenever a soul goes through the rebirth cycle, the memories of the previous life are erased. Explained Ichibe before picking up the huge brush at his side. But with me, this problem can be solved. And in a matter of seconds, he wrote 2 simple words on Yamamoto's right breastplate. Uzumaki Naruto. Yamamoto was about to ask him what sense it was to write a name on his Haori, but suddenly his mind was bombarded with images and memories of a past life. A life that belonged to Uzumaki Naruto. He was at the base of a huge waterfall. The view was blurred, and yet he was not tired. On the other side of the waterfall was a dark-haired boy with 2 huge hand-shaped wings. A stab of pain hit him, paralyzing his body. Before his vision was flooded with red. When he was able to see again, he was standing on that boy's body. His body had been horribly brutalized, and it was clear that he would never get up again. That black-haired boy was dead. A new stab of pain hit him, this time at the base of the neck, and everything turned black. Next thing, he was kneeling on a stage in the center of a large square, surrounded by people who were screaming at him. A blonde woman appeared in his field of vision. Uzumaki Naruto. For the murder of Uchiha Sasuke, you were condemned to death. He tried to break free, but what seemed like what kept him still. Next to the woman, a white-haired man appeared holding a strange sword made of rock. The newcomer walked up to stop in front of him, raising the sword above his head. For what it's worth, I'm sorry, Gaki. The blade of the sword fell downward. Everything turned black for the last time. Yamamoto placed a hand on the table, while the other was on his face. What was that? That was your past life, said a child with a calm voice. To give a new name to someone, I should use my Shurkai and then my Bankai. But to give back an old name, I can simply use my brush. What you just saw were the memories of Uzumaki Naruto, the one you were before you became Genryūsai Shigekuni Yamamoto. I was killed by Arrow Sennin. It was so strange to repeat that nickname, and yet it seemed normal to him. I killed Sasuke, my own teammate? Yes, you killed him. Ichibe nodded without trying to deny it. You used the power of the demon that was sealed within you, losing control to the point of killing him. Yamamoto looked down at his own hands. I seem to see myself 1,000 years ago. Always a demon, no matter what. Actually, there would be something to add to what you saw. Something you never could have known. The bald monk scratched his beard before saying, "You were betrayed." Oh. Yamamoto blinked once, twice. What? Well, maybe betrayed is too strong a word. What I mean is that you have been used or sacrificed if you prefer. What are you talking about, Hayasobe? I killed Uchiha Sasuke. Therefore, I was executed for that. Yes, that's true. But that was just a part of a much larger plan devised by someone who should have been dead. Ichibe looked at Yamamoto straight in the eyes. Your own father, Namikaze Minato, has planned everything, including your death. The former Captain Commander looked at him in silence, wondering if he was joking. But when he saw no sign of deception on the other man's face, he asked how. Such a short and generic question could have required more answers. But Ichibe was prepared thanks to the intervention of the Soul King, and so he explained to Yamamoto what he knew. The night of your birth, as you well know, the Kyuubi was released. What you don't know is that, up until the time of its escape, the fox had been sealed inside your mother's body, Uzumaki Kushina. When your father decided to seal the demon inside you, he used a new and experimental technique, summoning the Shinigami of that world, whose powers were above the fox, albeit barely. Thanks to this technique, he separated the fox's chakra into two parts. He sealed one inside himself and the other inside of you, using two different seals, that of the Shinigami for you and a new one of his invention for him. The use of a technique where the Shinigami was evoked would have required the soul of Minato as payment, but one of his trusty ninja completed the technique in his place, offering his soul instead of your father's. Your mother died soon after due to the extraction of the fox from her body, while your father ended up in a deep coma because of the fox. Normally, only an Uzumaki would have been able to contain the demon, but your father had created a reliable seal, and besides, he had only half the power of the fox. Therefore, he could survive. The man you called Arrow Sennin took Minato with him to the realm of toads, where Minato was in a coma for over a year. Upon awakening, Minato learned of what happened after sealing the Kyuubi and started working tirelessly to control its chakra, but above all to be able to bring his wife back to life. It took him 2 years, but in the end he managed to create a technique that would bring people back to life, but not as puppets, but as real people. However, he ran into a big problem. Ichibe pointed at Yamamoto, who was staring at him with shocked eyes upon learning that his father was still alive while he was living in an orphanage, being treated as a stranger by all. His new jutsu would allow him to use the Shinigami to his liking to control souls, so that the people brought back to life were perfect. But your seal created a disturbance in the use of the technique, and a seal created with the powers of the Shinigami could not be easily broken. After another year of studying and experimenting with his seals, he managed to create a safe area to summon his wife without interfering with your seal. Together with her, they managed to perfect his seals and his technique, but you were still a problem. Both were not excited at the idea of resorting to extreme methods, but for the happiness of many, they decided to remove your seal in the only possible way. By killing me, whispered Yamamoto, managing to maintain a composed posture. Yes, they explained their plan to many people, including the Sandaime Hokage, Jiraiya, and Tsunade, names you know well, said Ichibe with a calm voice. So, they started planning a way to kill you, but none of them had the courage to take your life directly, for no reason at all. In a macabre sense of humor, they really loved you. For years, they couldn't find a way to complete their plan until you killed Uchiha Sasuke, while you were using the power of the fox. What you don't know is that your father was there that day, and it was he who used a technique to force you to use a huge amount of the fox's chakra. Their idea was to kill you while you were completely out of control, so as to have less regrets. However, your willpower was stronger than expected, and so you managed to regain control and return to normal. I guess you know the rest. Yamamoto nodded slowly, still intent on accepting what he had just discovered. Using Sasuke's murder as an excuse, they sentenced me to death. Correct. Mainly because all Konoha would have clamored for your death. Ichibe scratched the back of his head, so they have decapitated you before burning of your whole body, so no one could bring you back to life, and half of the QB inside you died that day. Or that's what they think. With confused eyes, Yamamoto looked at the monk. What do you mean? The QB, or Kurama since that's his real name, has always remained by your side. Just in a different form, said Ichibe with a huge grin. Yamamoto remained silent, trying to understand, but suddenly his eyes widened in shock. He looked at his Zanpakuto, which was resting at his side, Ryujin Jaka, and, ignoring Ichibe's pleased look, he took it in his hand and slowly closed his eyes. Ryujin Jaka's inner world. Yamamoto reopened his eyes, standing on top of a column of solidified lava, while all around him, the flames devoured everything from the ground sky. After a few seconds of apparent calm, a powerful laugh echoed through the flames which, in front of Yamamoto, began to change shape. It's been a long time, kid. Over 1,000 years, if I remember correctly. Despite all his past years where he had always controlled his emotions well, Yamamoto could not suppress a smile that formed on his lips. QB, welcome back, Naruto. Or do you prefer to be called by your new name? Asked the huge fox head made of flames. As you prefer, even if I could ask you the same question. Right now, I've been your Zanpakuto for years, so as long as you'll be Genryūsai Shigekuni Yamamoto, I'll be Ryujin Jaka, said his longtime partner with a toothy grin. Very well. Yamamoto nodded at the fox's head. Now, it would be better if you went back to talking to that monk. I think he still has to get to the interesting part. With a little grin on his lips, Yamamoto could not but agree with him, and so he left that world. Ichibe Hayasub's place. Sorry for the interruption, said Yamamoto with a bow. Ichibe, wave him off. Don't worry, it's fine. Now it's time to tell you why you've been brought back to life. I think I know. I have to stop my father. Even if I have to ask, I've lived so long. How can he still be alive? Questioned Yamamoto with a raised eyebrow. Time flows in a very different way in the primitive worlds, so as to give the Soul King time to get used to having it under his domain. Explained Ichibe with a nod, but back at your job? Yes, you need to stop your own father, and I'm sorry to say this, but you'll have to kill him. His behavior is a clear insult to everything we protect and respect. Yamamoto closed his eyes for a moment. The Soul King wanted him to kill his father, but that choice would not be a problem for him. True, he now had memories of his past life, but as Uzumaki Naruto, he had never had any connection with him, so he would have had no trouble killing him, especially since it was his duty as a Shinigami of the Godai 13. Looking back at Ichibe, he nodded firmly. I'm ready. The monk nodded before standing up, then stepped out of the small building with Yamamoto behind him. There are some things you need to know. Once you have crossed a special Senkaman, you will be given a new body. A body made of flesh and bone. You will keep your Shinigami powers, but you will also have your old chakra, with all the related abilities you acquired when you were still Uzumaki Naruto. Furthermore, when you have finished your task, you can continue to live in that world as you wish. This is the Soul King's reward for all your years of loyalty. Yamamoto seemed surprised by this news, but nodded anyway, before walking towards the portal that would take him to his old world. But when he was a few steps away from it, the monk called him. Your father is not the only one you have to stop. Each person who has been brought back to life, those are fake souls and cannot be ignored. You will have to eliminate every single person brought back to life. I understand. Genryūsai. Yamamoto looked back at Ichibe. Those people, although they are fake souls, are happy, and the same goes for their loved ones who have had the opportunity to see them again. Once you start your task, you will become a monster in their eyes. Moments of silence followed his words, but in the end, Yamamoto nodded. I know, but even if I go back to using my old name, I'm Genryūsai Shigekuni Yamamoto, and my loyalty to the Soul Society comes first. And with those words, he walked into the Senkaman, disappearing into the white light. When the portal closed, the monk smiled. I hope you can find a new purpose in the new life that was given to you. Before walking away with a smirk. Now for the other one, Land of Whirlpools. Coming out of Senkaman, Yamamoto immediately realized that something had changed. He felt much stronger than before, and above all younger. Looking down, he noticed that he was still wearing his Shinigami robes, but could see the difference in his body. Now he was a human, no longer a soul. Walking towards a small body of water, he looked at his own reflection, and what he saw surprised him. His new body was practically an aged version of the old one, when he was still Uzumaki Naruto. Now he was probably around the age of 20, and his body was muscular and tempered like Genryūsai Shigekuni Yamamoto's, with the same scar on his forehead, mostly covered by his blonde hair that was longer than last time. Now, Kit, since we're in this world, should we start using our old names? After long and intense minutes of silence, Yamamoto. No, Naruto showed a grin that would make any hollow run for its life. I'd say it's a great idea, Kurama. Konoha has always praised about its will of fire. Now it's time for those same flames to be their condemnation. And with a shumpo worthy of a master, he vanished in a thin air, headed for the continent. Naruto Uzumaki had returned, and his flames were ready to judge anyone who dared to face him. Appearing from nowhere, Naruto looked around with calm eyes. Judging by the huge trees he saw in the surroundings, he was certainly in the land of fire. At least he hadn't gone in the wrong direction. Now, how should I act? Thought Naruto before heading north, where he could sense a large number of people. If I just go to Konoha and then kill everyone, it could be a problem. I don't think they can defeat me, but they managed to enslave the Shinigami of this world, so they might have some tricks up their sleeve that I still don't know. There is also the problem of knowing how to recognize people who have been brought back to life. It is not certain that their souls are different in appearance, said Kurama with his deep voice. The same he had when we was still a Bijou. I would suggest taking a brief inspection tour to get an idea of what we have to face. Good idea, but first, concentrating. Naruto used his chakra for the first time, and within seconds he was engulfed in an explosion of white smoke. Once dissipated, an old man with a long gray beard was in his place. Are you going to use your appearance as Genryūsai Shigekuni Yamamoto? Yes, I'm a new face to them. If I were to present myself with my true appearance, the end of the world would be unleashed. Also, with you still hidden in my walking stick, it is better to use my old appearance, explained Naruto while walking like an old man, his eyes almost completely closed. Can't argue with that, nodded Kurama before adding, also, Kit. Yes, we've company. From the trees around him suddenly appeared several men dressed in dark clothes, but all different from each other. With a quick glance, Naruto understood that they were a group of missing nin, since all of them had a headband with a line engraved above the symbol of their former village. Instinctively, his mind reminded him of two missing nin in particular, who had died years before during his first real mission as a ninja of Konoha. I wonder where the circle of rebirth brought them. Hey, old man, said one of the missing nin, taking a step forward, this area belongs to us. If you want to pass, you have to pay a fee. While the other men laughed as if they had just heard something funny, Naruto could only sigh. Yar yar. Today's children are truly disrespectful. Some of the ninja growled for comment, but then Naruto slowly opened one eye. I think a punishment is a must. None of them understood what had happened, but in a single instant, they all found themselves on their knees, crushed by a monstrous pressure. Most of them also had tears in their eyes, foam coming out of their mouths, and a dark patch between their trousers. However, Naruto ignored them all, concentrating only on the man who had spoken, who was watching him with eyes full of terror. My task has no time limit, said Naruto with his usual calm voice. However, I don't have the patience to teach infants like you how to breathe. The missing nin in front of him felt bile go up his throat. How is it possible? The man in front of him had done nothing, yet he had reduced them to that state. He was once a ninja from Kumo. He had felt the negative aura of the Hachibi, yet it was nothing compared to what he is feeling now. However, before you faint, tell me, in what direction is Konoha? Asked Naruto, leaning forward slowly. The former ninja of Kumo barely managed to move a trembling arm, pointing behind his own shoulder. Thank you. And with that, Naruto lifted his spiritual pressure, letting all the ninjas faint around him. You haven't lost your touch, I see. It is now a part of me, and I still have to understand how many years have passed since my death. If I'm right, now I have thousands of years of experience over them. A loud laugh echoed in his mind. It will be the first and only time I will say this. But right now, I would like Uchiha Madara to be still alive just to see you reduce him to ashes. Continuing to walk with his eyes seemingly closed, Naruto grinned. I'll take that as a compliment. Flames of Duty. Chapter 2, 8 Years. Well, it seems that Konoha has grown a lot, thought Naruto while staring at the second ring of walls of the Shinobi village. Apparently, during his years of absence, Konoha had also expanded geographically and now occupied much more space than before, so much that outside the original walls they had built other houses and then another circle of walls. He could still see the Hokage Mountain, which now consisted of 5 heads, but was definitely farther away. Ignoring Kyuubi's comment that the former Hokages had built a large village to compensate with something else, Naruto started toward the big gate in front of him, and after a few minutes, he saw 2 familiar faces to him. Those 2? Naruto wondered, looking at Kotetsu and Izumo, both near the entrance. I have the impression that not much time has passed since my death, that or these 2 haven't yet risen in rank. Halt! State your business, said Kotetsu, raising one hand to stop Naruto. Sighing to himself, Naruto approached them with the speed of an elder. I'd like to come in and spend a couple of days in Konoha. Many years have passed since I last stayed here, and I would like to see what has changed. Izumo smiled at him. Well then, you will surely be surprised. Konoha has made enormous progress in recent years. I can see that. Last time I was here, there were only 3 faces on that mountain. Lied Naruto, but he had to give the impression of being very old in order to avoid problems. You've been here a few years ago. We weren't even in service at the time, noted Kotetsu with surprised eyes. Even if they had been on duty, they would still be guarding this gate. Naruto could only agree with the fox. After a few minutes, he was given a temporary pass, and so Naruto could finally enter Konoha after years of absence. The first things he saw didn't impress him as much. After all, he was still in the part called New Konoha, but compared to the beauty of the Soul Society, his old village was definitely not impressive. However, as he walked along the streets so full of life, he noticed how the population had increased a lot. Do you think these people were brought back to life? Hard to say. Even with our abilities, I can't tell if these people have always been alive or not, said Kurama, but after a moment, he growled, no, now I'm sure of it, we can't recognize them. How did you get it? Uchiha, surprised by that word. Naruto looked around and, not far away, saw a small family of 3, all with dark eyes and hair. Are those? Yes, they are Uchiha. I can feel it. And last time I checked, your teammate's older brother had exterminated the entire clan, growled Kurama, wishing to tear them apart. Despite all the years spent as Ryujin Jaka, his hatred of that clan had not yet vanished. Which means that my father brought the whole clan back to life, probably Sasuke too. Great, just great. Now we have the whole clan to kill. Not that I'm complaining, but they're definitely a pain in the ass. Next thing you will tell me that also the Senju are back. Ah, Senju-san, welcome back, said a shopkeeper next to them, welcoming 2 people who had the Senju clan symbol on their clothes. Damn my big mouth. It seems like it will be a long job if we want to do it properly, thought Naruto with a sigh before walking toward the original walls. He had to see his old village, the real one, to understand how much it had really changed. Once he arrived at the gate, he only had to show his pass in order to enter, and finally, he was able to see the place where he had grown up when he was still known as Uzumaki Naruto. It's almost time for lunch. I might as well go eat, thought Naruto before walking toward his once favorite ramen stand, which, much to his surprise, had expanded his business and was now a huge restaurant. The aroma in the air was unmistakable, so he entered through the front door, making a little bell ring, attracting the attention of a maid. The young woman approached him with a smile. Welcome to Ichiraku Ramen. Do you want a table, or you wish to order to take away? So they hired staff? I wonder if Ayam still works here, thought Naruto before nodding at her a table for 1. Thank you. Of course. This way, please. After taking a menu, the waitress accompanied him to a small table before giving him time to decide what to order. After sitting down, Naruto glanced around and noted with pleasure that the restaurant was full of customers. Despite his mission and the discovery that his previous life had simply been a lie for an ultimate purpose, Naruto had no grudge against that small family that had fed him, many times for free for most of his life. However, at a table nearby, Naruto saw something that surprised him, and for the first time, he felt a small note of regret at having to do his duty. Currently sitting at a table for 4, there was one Yumino Irika, his old teacher at the academy, and he was not alone. Sitting by his side was a purple-haired woman whom Naruto recognized as Mitarashi Anko, the kunoichi he had seen during the Chunin exams, while in front of them there were two older people than them, and the man looked a lot like Irika. They must be his parents. As far as I can remember, they died the night you were released from my mother. Your father certainly didn't hold back. If what I see is true, there will be hundreds of people to kill before it's all over," said Kurama before adding, "However, I think that first we should talk to the Shinigami of this world. Maybe we could prevent it from being summoned. Possible, but first it will be better to look around. From what I see, Irika has not aged much. The only way I could be certain is to meet someone from my old class." And so, after ordering several bowls of ramen and paying them with the money he had stolen from the missing nin, Naruto left the restaurant, heading for the academy. Looking around, Naruto noticed how the shinobi were more numerous in this part of the village, but he didn't care too much, preferring to keep his eyes set for any familiar faces, which happened a few minutes later when he saw a trio of ninja walking in the opposite direction to his, all three with green vests on top of their clothes. Well, it looks like they all became Chunin. Even if the lazy one has Jonin's vest, his intelligence must have helped him a lot, thought Naruto, looking at Team 10 as they walked while talking among each other. A brief flash of his past brought him back to that stage where he had been executed and in the crowd in front of him. He saw the faces of Shikamaru and Ino intent on observing him with a mixture of emotions on their faces. Shaking his head, Naruto kept walking until he was in front of the academy, but saw no one noteworthy. The students were still in classrooms. Judging by the appearance of the others, I would say that about 10 years have passed since I died. Konohamaru and the others are probably no longer students. We can't just walk around and hope to discover something. I would advise you to go to the library. The history text should be accessible to everyone. Naruto nodded. He had already considered the idea of relying on written texts, but he still wanted to look around before resorting to that solution. Closing his eyes to concentrate and making sure no one was following him, Naruto vanished with his shumpo, appearing moments later in an alley near the library. Going out into the street like a normal person, he entered the big building, stopping in front of the main counter, where a ninja greeted him. "Good afternoon. May I help you?" "Yes. Could you point me towards a section with historical texts? I would like to consult some books about the latest events here in Konoha," asked Naruto, still pretending to be a frail old man and not at all dangerous. "But of course, please follow me." The ninja walked behind the counter before going between two huge shelves, pointing to a series of books. These texts cover the entire history of Konoha from its foundation to the present. But for what you have requested, these two will suffice. He picked up two books, one with the Konoha symbol on the cover and the other with the symbol of the Land of Fire. The first covers all events from the return of the Yondaime Hokage to the present. Many of his miracles are also indicated, while the other covers the same historical period, but is not limited only to Konoha, but to the entire Land of Fire. There are still events that are born of the actions of our ninja. Naruto thanked him before taking the two books and going to sit at an empty table. Opening the first book, he began to read it for a few hours, before moving on to the second, skipping several chapters that he was not interested in. In the end, the sun was almost set and Naruto rubbed his eyes, trying to ignore the headache that was coming. This is going to be a long task. You can say that, Kit. The list of targets is longer than expected. Apparently, the day after his death, Namake's Minato and his wife, Uzumaki Kushina, had returned from the grave. The Yondaime had been welcomed as a hero by the population and had resumed his duties as Hokage, leaving Tsunade to run the hospital. In the days to come, Minato had explained that he had to remain hidden in order to regain his strength and to learn to control his new power, the Kyuubi's chakra. Naruto was particularly upset to find that his father, despite being a Jinchuriki like him, was treated like a god. The surprises didn't end there, because even the Sandaime Hokage had returned from the grave, shocking everyone, or at least all those who didn't know of the plan of Minato, explaining that he had only staged his death against Orochimaru so that he could better recover his strength. The shock was only increased when the old leader returned as young as when he first became Hokage, again thanks to Minato. Both Naruto and Kurama had speculated that, with some special seal, Minato had discovered some ways to make people rejuvenate, and that the Sandaime had not actually summoned the Shinigami in his fight with Orochimaru, but had used some trick provided by Minato. The surprises for Konoha, and for all their allies and enemies, were not yet over, because Minato had revealed, during an important speech, that he could bring the dead back to life, having managed to control the Shinigami and his powers. After a public demonstration, Minato had achieved the status of Messiah in the eyes of Konoha. The following months had been a succession of building new homes and resurrecting people, or making them rejuvenate. The entire Uzumaki clan, as well as the Uchiha clan and the Senju clan, had been revived, including the first two Hokage and Uzumaki Mido. From what Naruto had discovered, there had been disagreements between Minato and some groups of people brought back to life, but after seeing the pros and cons of his actions, the Yondaime had been forgiven by receiving Senju Hashirama's blessing. On a side note, Uchiha Itachi had returned to Konoha after being forgiven of his crime and was now the current head of the Uchiha clan. The rest of the chapters were a succession of the legendary exploits of Minato, including bringing Orochimaru back to their side, stopping a legendary demon in the land of demons, and making the Nadeshiko village their ally. Some marriages to solidify the alliance with allied villages and things like that. Not even a negative note on all those pages. Naruto had imagined that it was a civilian who wrote those books. We've basically 3 whole clans, my father and all the other people he brought back to life. I was thinking, what do we do about the new generation? From what we have discovered, 8 years have passed since you died, and during that time, the people brought back to life have also had the opportunity to procreate, said Kurama, pointing to one of the main problems with their task. We leave them alone. Even if they were born of people with fake souls, they are living beings born thanks to the circle of souls. Killing them would be just an injustice, replied Naruto without missing a beat. Now we know what happened during my absence and how many targets we have. We just have to contact the Shinigami of this world and see if we can do something to prevent him from being summoned, so as to solve the problem at the source. I guess we have no other choice. How are you going to contact him? I don't know. It is possible that the technique to evoke him is preserved in the Scroll of Seals, but trying to break into the Hokage Tower to get it would attract too much attention. I also imagine that after the theft on my part 8 years ago, they reinforced security, thought Naruto before using his Shumpo to disappear once he made sure he was alone in the alley next to the library. Much to Kurama's confusion, Naruto reappeared in the middle of a clearing near some trees with a path nearby. In front of him, a few feet away, there were 2 objects. The first was a kind of monument in the shape of a kunai, completely black, on which names were engraved. Kurama knew that it was the memorial stone, but it was the second object that caught his attention, a half-body statue made of white marble depicting Naruto. Apparently, my father commissioned this monument to remind everyone that I was a hero for keeping you at bay for 12 years since my birth, said Naruto, walking toward the monument before staring at it and the flowers at the base for a long moment. Looks like someone brought flowers recently. Kurama wanted to try to distract him from the thoughts that were going through his mind, but the sound of steps caught their attention, and, turning around, Naruto had to control himself to avoid showing the emotions on his face. Good evening. I've never seen you around here, said Uzumaki Kushina with a smile and a bouquet of orange flowers in hand. Are you here to remember someone who is no longer there? You can say that, nodded Naruto after a moment before turning again to look at the monument. Kushina joined him before depositing the flowers under his statue. You know, he was my son, yet I have never been by his side except for a few minutes. Naruto watched her for a moment. Why is she telling me this? Before saying this is nothing new. Many mothers lose their lives during childbirth. Others lose their children. The woman nodded with a bitter smile. Yes, I know. Unfortunately, we didn't have this luck. Neither he nor I. She looked at the old man at her side. I'm one of the many people brought back to life by Minato, yet I never managed to hold my child in my arms. Naruto raised an eyebrow, slightly, so why not bring him back to life? Kushina chuckled, but Naruto noticed how that chuckle was empty of emotions. He can't. There was a special seal on his body, a seal of the Shinigami. Those who have it cannot be brought back to life. This explains why I haven't met a possible clone of mine yet, thought Naruto while staring at his own mother, who was unaware of his true identity. She is one of my targets. She will die anyway in one way or another. I could kill her now, with a sword blow, but my father would bring her back to life, and I'd be at the starting point. Mom, I am hungry. Can we go? Shouted a female voice from behind them, and, looking in that direction, Naruto found himself for the second time having to control his emotions because 2 girls were running towards them, both about 16 years old. The first was a carbon copy of his mother, while the second was practically the same as Naruto, when, in the past, he used his Oiroke no Jutsu. That detail was particularly disturbing. Naruto, can't you see I'm praying for your brother? You should do the same, you know, said his mother, looking at blonde girl, who merely pouted before pointing at the flowers at the base of the statue. Can't you see those flowers? Who do you think brought them today? I can confirm her story, Mom, said the other girl with a calm voice. Immediately after training with our sensei, we went to buy some flowers and brought them here. Kushina smiled at them. Is that so, Mawako? Then I'd say we can go eat. You go ahead. I'll join you soon. The two girls nodded before leaving, while Kushina turned again to Naruto. Those were my daughters. In a way, they helped me fill the void that remained after my son's death. I see. Naruto stared at their retreating form for a moment before walking away. It's time for me to go. It was a pleasure to speak with you. The pleasure was mine, said Kushina before looking at the statue of her son. After a whole minute passed in silence, she bowed and then left, going after her daughters. Not far away, Naruto was walking with no apparent destination, and Kurama chose that particular moment to make himself heard. So you don't just have to kill your parents, but you also have to make your sister's orphan. This task is becoming more and more pleasant. This will not stop me. It is my duty as the former captain commander of the Godiai 13 to ensure that the flow of souls is not put at risk. Thought Naruto with a sigh. I just hope my father has no other surprise in store for me. It is always a possibility with your father. His mind is so sharp and full of ideas that it reminds me of Aizen. What will you do now? The only thing we need to know is how to get in touch with the Shinigami. Asking around would seem too suspicious, so I'm going to ask an old friend if he knows anything about it. And with the Shumpo, Naruto was gone. The next day, Suna, so this is how the Hueco Mundo would be without its eternal night, thought Naruto while walking toward the gate of Suna, which was simply a space between two rock walls, blocked at least by a door. Once reached, he had to go through the same procedure as Konoha, thus obtaining a temporary pass. Walking through the streets of Suna, he realized how completely different the situation was from Konoha. The difference between the two villages was practically the same as that between the Rukongai and the Siriidii in the Soul Society. That's strange. Suna and Konoha should be allies. So why does this place only show signs of decay and poverty? We'll probably find out when we can talk to Gaara, though I don't think he can tell us anything about Shinigami or the technique used by Minato, said Kurama with a bored voice. It's still worth a try. In any case, it will be nice to see an old friend again, especially now that he has become Kazekage, replied Naruto before reaching the Kazekage Tower. Entering the building, he approached what was supposed to be a secretary. The young girl, noticing him only after a few seconds, hastened to greet him. Gee, good morning. How may I help you? I wanted to know if it was possible to talk to the Kazekage, said Naruto with a polite tone. It's about something important. The girl seemed surprised by his request, but still looked at an agenda. The Kazekage would be free at this time. However, I must first ask if he is available to meet you. Can I have a name, so as to tell him who asks to meet him? Just tell him that an old friend is back from the grave. He'll probably understand, said Naruto with a little grin, confusing the secretary. After squaring him for a moment, the secretary pressed the button of an intercom on her desk. Kazekage-sama, there is a person here who wished to meet you. He says. She looked at Naruto, who was still grinning, that he is a friend who has returned from the grave. After a few seconds of silence, Gaara's voice was heard from the intercom. Send him in. Naruto thanked the secretary before walking towards Gaara's office and, once in front of the door, knocked 3 times. Hearing a come in, he opened the door and entered, immediately noticing that they were not alone in there. Apart from Gaara and 2 hidden presences, which Naruto suggested were ANBU, there was also a young brown-haired woman with a small child in her arms who had the same hair as Gaara. So not only did you become Kazekage, but now you also have a family. My compliments, Gaara. You got what I always dreamed of as a child, said Naruto with a smile, ignoring the suspicious look of his old friend. Who are you? Asked Gaara, staring at the old man in front of him, while sand rose from behind him to protect the woman with the child, and the 2 ANBU were ready to attack the stranger. Your words hurt me, Gaara, said Naruto before being swallowed by an explosion of white smoke. Gaara and the 2 ANBU prepared for a possible fight, but when the smoke cleared, they remained frozen on the spot, staring with incredulous eyes at the blonde young man who had appeared before them. Naruto smiled again at Gaara. "It's been a long time, my friend." "In the flesh," nodded Naruto, still smiling. But that's not possible. You were executed 8 years ago, and your body was completely reduced to ashes," said Gaara in an insecure voice, even though he was hoping with all his heart that the person in front of him was really Naruto. "It's true, but nothing can stop the most unpredictable ninja in Konoha. Not even death," said Naruto with a grin. "I thought you understood after I defeated you 8 years ago, using Gamabunta to fight against the demon you released." Gaara nodded slowly as a smile formed on his lips. Few people know about that particular. "You really are Naruto." At that moment, the two ANBU came out of their hiding places, and with a simple glance, Naruto understood who they were. The two took off their masks, showing incredulous faces. "Naruto, how are you alive?" asked Temari with a trembling voice while looking at her brother's first real friend, with her brother Kankuro doing the same. "It's a long story, Temari," said Naruto with a little smile before looking back at Gaara. "If you wish, I'll tell you." Gaara nodded, wanting to know how his friend had survived. But first he pointed to the woman who had remained silent until then. "Before that, I'd like to introduce you to my wife, Matsuri, and my son, Hizari." Naruto bowed to them. "It's a pleasure to meet you." "Oh no, the pleasure is all mine," said Matsuri with a smile. "Gaara told me a lot about you. It is an honor to finally meet you." Chuckling, Naruto went to sit in front of Gaara's desk, while his friend's family went to his side. Like I said, this is going to be a long story, and so, for hours to come, he told them about his life as Genryūsai Shigekuni Yamamoto, the Soul Society, the Zanpakuto, the Hollow, Aizen and his betrayal, the Quincy's, the Soul King, and all the rest, including the reason for his return. At the end of his story, the four in front of him were speechless. "And that's my story. This is incredible," said Gaara with shocked eyes. "I never thought anything like this could exist." Wait a minute." Everyone looked at Kankuro, who seemed quite nervous. "Now that you've told us all this, aren't we going to run into trouble with this Soul King or someone else?" "Fear not. The simple fact that you know all this doesn't put you in danger. I am sorry to say this, but when you die, your memories of this life will be erased, so in your next life, you will know nothing of it, and you will have to learn it again at most," explained Naruto before sending a light glare at Kankuro. "However, I would appreciate that none of you went around telling what I just said. Better not think about what Konoha could do with this information." Gaara's brother nodded quickly, feeling tiny in front of that look, and at his side, Temari grinned at the sight of her brother being put in line with a single glance. "Your secret is safe with us, Naruto," nodded the Kazekage. "What are you going to do now?" "I will try to get in touch with the Shinigami of this world. I also came here to find out if you knew of any method to help me with the task," explained Naruto with a serious voice. "Unfortunately, we have nothing that can help you, but if you need to see it, you should go to Konoha on Sunday," said Gaara, confusing his friend. "Why?" "The Yondaime Hokage doesn't always use his technique to bring someone back to life, but uses it only once every Sunday to revive those who died during the week," explained Temari with a disgusted look. "Practically, it has become a public event for them, so you should have no trouble seeing the Shinigami." "I see." Naruto thought for a moment what to do, but then nodded. "Then I will head to Konoha to see this event. However, I wanted to ask, why is Suna reduced to this state? As I recall, your village and Konoha had an alliance 8 years ago." Gaara grimaced before nodding. "Yes, we were allies, but when we received word of your execution, your father offered to bring our mother back to life to keep our alliance firm." He narrowed his eyes. "Using human lives as a bargaining chip disgusts me. Besides the fact that they executed you when that man could bring Uchiha Sasuke back to life, as he did, made us think, if he can bring the dead back to life, why didn't he do it before? Why didn't he bring you back to life too?" asked Temari while shaking her head. "The conclusion to which we have arrived is that you, for some strange reason, were an obstacle and they decided to remove you from this world. We also tried to ask the Hokage to bring you back to life, but he said he couldn't without giving us any explanation," added Kankuro with a frown, "so we decided to cancel our alliance, limiting ourselves to a non-aggression pact with Konoha." After listening to their words, a sad smile formed on Naruto's lips. "I'm sorry to hear that. Suna is so reduced because of me too." "Don't blame yourself, my friend. Your father believes he is a god and has done things that a normal person would never dare to do, said Gaara with a smile. I am the Kazekage, so the well-being of the village falls on my shoulders. Naruto nodded before standing up. Anyway, I'll try to help you to the best of my ability. No friend of mine will suffer until I can avoid it. Thank you, but I think you have a long way ahead of you. Will you go to Konoha right away? Asked Gaara, walking toward the door with him after Naruto used the hinge no jutsu again. Tomorrow. It may not seem like it, but now my speed is higher than that of Minato. I will arrive in Konoha in a short time, explained Naruto with a grin. I see. So what about being my guest? My house is big, and we have many empty rooms. I appreciate the invitation, but if there is one thing I remember is that Jiraiya has spies everywhere, and I would like to avoid attracting attention while I'm here, said Naruto with a frown while looking out of a window. I'll just sleep in a hotel. Very well, if you need anything, don't hesitate to ask. I will do everything in my power to help you, said Gaara before shaking his hand. Thank you, Gaara. It means a lot to me, said Naruto with a smile before setting out on the streets of Suna, soon disappearing in the crowd. Naruto-kun has really changed a lot, said Temari in a pleasant tone. Oh, Naruto-kun, repeated Kankuro with a grin, making her blush. A blackmail material. In his momentary moment of victory, Kankuro didn't notice how Gaara had left together with his wife and son, just as he didn't notice that Temari had worn her ANBU mask again. Kankuro, the young boy, froze after hearing his sister's voice, and, turning slowly towards her, he saw Temari raise her fan above her head. Care to repeat that? Not the face. A few blocks away, Naruto stopped for a second. I would swear I heard Kankuro scream. Like a little girl? Naruto nodded. Like a little girl. Now, where can I find a hotel? But his search was abruptly interrupted when a voice was heard behind him. Oh, I think it's the first time I can get close to you without being identified. Naruto quickly turned to the person who had spoken, but what he saw made his eyes widen in shock. The newcomer smiled at him. It's been a while, Captain Commander. You! Naruto could only watch the person in front of him with shocked eyes. Since arriving in this world, he had been surprised several times, but none of them was comparable to the shock he was feeling at that moment, seeing someone he thought he would never see again. Someone who was wearing the unmistakable Haori of the captains of the Genryūsai 13. I think it's the first time I see you so surprised, said that person with a calm voice. Is seeing me here such a big surprise? The former Captain Commander stood still for a few seconds before shaking his head. I think you would have the same reaction in my place. But then he let a small smile form on his lips. It's nice to see you again, Captain Unohana. Retsu Unohana, former captain of the 4th Division of the Genryūsai 13, smiled at him. Only a few days have passed, yet to me it seems like an eternity. Your death was a hard blow to the entire Genryūsai 13. Naruto remained silent before looking towards the sky. Those youngsters are strong. I have trained many of them, and I know what they are capable of. The woman chuckled a bit. I knew you'd say it. Could you be interested in knowing who took your place? After thinking about it for a few seconds, Naruto nodded. How about talking about it at lunch? Sure, how about some ramen? Asked Retsu. Surprising the former Captain Commander, Ichibe Hyasube also told me about your life as Uzumaki Naruto when he told me about your mission. Naruto looked at her with serious eyes. Were you sent here to help me? Retsu smiled at him. That's right, but like you said, let's talk about it over a cup of ramen. I've always liked strong flavored dishes. And with that, she walked toward an inn with Naruto at her side. In short, the two were seated at an isolated table, under Naruto's request, and both ordered ramen. So, how come you were sent here with me? I understand the reasoning in wanting to assist me, but your healing skills would be more useful in the Soul Society, especially now that they are at war with the Quincy's, said Naruto with a calm voice, before adding in a sadder tone, unless you two have reached the end. Retsu smiled sadly at him. Unfortunately, you guessed right, but I didn't die at the hands of a Quincy. I died at the hands of the one I consider a worthy successor. Naruto was surprised by her words before nodding. That brat has finally figured out what it means to be a captain? That I don't know, replied Retsu before chuckling a bit. What I do know is that he can finally do justice to the title of Kenpachi. The former Captain Commander snorted. Well, whatever he does, he's no longer my problem. The last time he caused damage, I had to hear the Central 40 SXS complaints for days and days. Retsu couldn't help laughing at the memory of that episode. Anyway, have you been sent here just to assist me? Yes, that's the deal, but in return I can live my new life here just like you. After all, I lived here before being reborn as a soul, explained Retsu, surprising Naruto. "In fact, I lived during the period in which you were Uzumaki Naruto. We also met before my death." Noticing Naruto's confused look, she added with a small smile, "During your first C-rank mission turned A-rank." Hearing those words, Naruto's eyes widened instantly due to the shock. Haku. However, rather than nodding, Retsu showed him a grin that, many years ago, terrorized the other captains of the Godai. Close enough, Gaki. Naruto's mind, like Kurama's, suffered a blackout for several seconds before a single word came out of his mouth. Zetsubuja, Flames of Duty. Chapter 3, The Shinigami. Meanwhile, Konoha. "And with this, the meeting is over," said Namikaze Minato with a smile on his face as he stamped an important document. Looking forward, he kept his smile. "Thanks for your hard work. I hope to see you all at the festival tomorrow." The only masked person sitting at the table, an ANBU with a dragon mask, said nothing before fading away in a swirl of leaves. Minato chuckled. "Obviously, I'm referring to those who aren't always on duty." "What a drag," said Nara Shikaku with a sigh. "This meeting was longer than the others. You knew what was waiting for you when you accepted the position of representative of the Konoha clans," said Ichirakatuchi with a smile. "You and I are in the same boat, after all. Troublesome. Next time I will vote for Itachi instead of accepting this job." Minato laughed at his friend's words before greeting the rest of the council and going to his office, where he knew other documents to sign were waiting for him. At least with the new council he had established 8 years ago, the Hokage's workload had dropped considerably, and in the evening, he could even finish early if he was lucky. When Minato had returned from the grave, the council was still composed exclusively of the Hokage and the village elders, Shimura Danzo, Midokado Hamura, and Udatane Koharu. However, after Minato discovered Danzo's true intentions, as well as his private militia called Root, he removed him from the council and imprisoned him in the Konoha maximum security prison, before inserting Sachirobe Hiruzen, despite his new youth, in his place. However, Minato realized that such a limited council could not help him on all aspects of the village, so he decided to add 3 new elements. The ANBU commander, Dragon, who helped him make important decisions regarding the most arduous missions. A representative of the Konoha clans, which was decided by voting by all the clan heads. And with the last vote, his dear friend Shikaku was elected. And finally, a representative of civilians, who was voted in the same way, but only by civilians. And the position was taken by Ichirakatuchi thanks to his experience and his various knowledge about the civilian population. Thanks to these changes, life had become much easier for Minato, even though the work was never lacking. Entering his office, Minato went to sit at his desk, where he remained silent for a few seconds before looking at the 2 photos he always kept at hand. The first was 8 years old and depicted him sitting right at that desk with Kushina and their daughters by his side. It had been taken a few days after his return. The second, the one that for him was perhaps even more important, had been taken a few months before the other and depicted a blonde boy with blue eyes and a white and red face. That was the picture of Naruto when he had to do it for his ninja ID. When Hiruzen had told him about that day, Minato had laughed, happy that his son was always cheerful and inclined to make jokes despite his difficult life. Now, Minato kept it on his desk as a warning of his failure. Despite his brilliant mind and his skill in the seals, he had never been able to find a way around the seal of the Shinigami he had used to block the Kyuubi inside Naruto. That fateful night, Minato had thought of using the same seal he had used on himself, but Naruto was just a baby and the seal needed a strong will to stay intact. If he had used it on his son, the Kyuubi would have fled his little body after a few seconds, killing him in the process. In the coming years, Minato had tried everything, but every seal he created to bring the others back to life always ended up reacting with the Shinigami seal. The worst moment of his life was when he decided to take advantage of Uchiha Sasuke's retrieve mission to be able to eliminate his son once he was under the control of the fox. But even then, the plan failed. When they had brought Naruto back to Konoha, after making him lose his conscience with a seal at the base of his neck, Minato had decided that it was his job to finish all this. But his teacher had told him that he didn't have the courage to do it. Minato still hated Jiraiya for noticing it right away. After his son's execution, Minato had preferred to remain hidden for a day so he could mentally recover. But then he started his plan for a lasting peace. Bringing to life the strongest people of the past, He had made Konoha remain the strongest village without needing another war to prove it. Along with the Fox Chakra that he was controlling and several seals, he had also found a way to make people rejuvenate, so as to bring them back to their best years. Minato had proposed to do the same with their allies, like Taki and Suna, but the latter had refused shortly before canceling their alliance. Some people had proposed to take their alliance back by force, but Minato had rejected any idea about it, saying he didn't want to start another war. The proof was that, 8 years after his return, he had never tried to invade the other lands despite the overwhelming superiority of Konoha. "Don't worry, Naruto, I'll find a way to bring you back to life," said Minato with a smile before hearing someone knock on the door of his office. "Come in." A chunin came in hurriedly before stopping in front of his desk. "Hokage-sama, the South Gate guards have reported something they think you should know." Minato immediately took a serious look. "What is it?" The ninja in front of him gave him a file with some papers inside, and, once opened, Minato saw a photo of a bald old man with a long gray beard and a scar on his forehead. "Genryūsai Shigekuni Yamamoto?" "Yes, sir," nodded the chunin apparently. "He arrived just before noon yesterday and asked if he could enter Konoha and stay for a couple of days. From what the guards told us, he hadn't come to Konoha for several years and wanted to see what had changed." "I see. And this Genryūsai caused trouble?" "Not at all, but it seems that he is no longer in Konoha and no guard post at the gates has seen him leave the village," explained the ninja with a serious look. "We also tried to use the security force and your seals to increase the capacity of their Byakugan, but there was no way to find him." "MH." Minato looked down at the picture of Naruto's henge. "Try again to look for him. If not in the village, try in the training grounds or in the wooded areas." "Yes, Hokage-sama." The chunin nodded before leaving the office. Maybe he's a retired ninja and he left with some jutsu, but the barrier that surrounds Konoha should have noticed it. Thought Minato before starting to sign documents. Maybe it's nothing, but why do I have the impression that something big is coming? "Suna." An uncomfortable silence hung over the inn's table as Naruto ate his ramen without looking up. He was in his 5th bowl, yet he hadn't yet said a single word. The waitress was even intimidated by his presence when she brought him the food. The woman sitting in front of him, after all that time, could no longer hold back a laugh. "I've known you for so many years, but this is the first time I've seen you sulk for a little joke. In both my lives, I never liked being on the receiving end of a joke, especially during my days like Uzumaki Naruto, but you should already know this, Haku," replied Naruto with a stern look, making her giggle. "Forgive me, but I couldn't waste such an occasion," said the now identified Haku. "Now, could you tell me how you can be Haku and Zabuza?" asked the former captain commander before finishing his bowl of ramen. "To put it simply, when we died, I didn't want to abandon Zabuza. He should have gone to hell for all he did, but I didn't want to let him go. Apparently my soul didn't want to be separated from his," said Haku with a fond smile while poking the ramen in her bowl. "And with mine being a pure soul, the Soul King decided to merge our souls, letting mine be the predominant one." Naruto snorted at that. "Hard to say, seeing your early years as Gotei, 13, and even before then." Haku had to concede that point. "It is true that during my reign as the first Kenpachi my behavior was more similar to Zabuza's, but I think that was a thoughtful reflection of my soul before being reborn. The desire not to lose him. And eventually your kind side surfaced when you became captain of the 4th Division," said Naruto, looking at the woman who had remained at his side as captain since the beginning of the Gotei 13. "You can say that," nodded Haku. "When Ichibe Hayasu brought me back to life and gave me memories of my past life, he explained your mission to me and offered to assist you." "I see." Naruto started to eat his 6th bowl. "I guess you want to know what I discovered so far." Haku smiled at him. "I would really appreciate it." And so Naruto began to tell her everything he had discovered, from the people brought back to life by Minato to his idea of coming into contact with the Shinigami of that world. At the end of the story, Haku seemed to be thinking intensely about something, a lot of targets, without a doubt. "However, I think I have an easier way to get in touch with the Shinigami, assuming that Zabuza's memories are reliable." "What do you mean?" "Apparently, when Zabuza was still young, he had heard about the Uzumaki clan and how they were close allies of Konoha. Among the various stories he had heard, there was one that told of a temple located not far from Konoha, and that there was a way to get in touch with the Shinigami," explained Haku with a serious look. "We could try to reach this temple and see if the story is true or not." Naruto seemed to think about it for a few seconds before nodding. Very well. We'll do as you say. It should not be difficult to find this temple. Haku nodded as well, and, after paying and going to the deserted alley, the two disappeared into thin air, using both a perfect shumpo. Konoha's outskirts, well, it must be admitted that it is a temple worthy of the name, said the former captain of the 4th Division while looking at the huge temple in front of them, perfectly maintained and without any defect. They must have recently renovated it. That wood is too light to be old, noted Naruto before walking toward it with Haku at his side. The two entered without any difficulty, as the place was deserted, and immediately found themselves facing a wall on which 27 Oni masks were hung. What exactly are we looking for? A mask would be obvious, but I can't say which one, replied Haku, looking at the various masks. Naruto seemed to look at them all one by one, but his gaze stopped on one in particular with small horns pointing upwards. Approaching that one, he removed it from the wall to look at it better and immediately noticed a small seal in the inner part, where usually the forehead was going to rest. This one, said the former captain commander, this is the one we are looking for. How can you be so sure? Asked Haku with confused eyes. Did you understand that from that seal? Not really, it's just that I can feel something with this one. The others are just plain masks made of wood. Explained Naruto, we should leave this place and move to a more secluded place. From what I've seen, nobody has returned to Uzushio after its destruction. There we can talk undisturbed with the Shinigami. Haku nodded without objecting, and the two vanished again, reappearing a few minutes later amid the ruins of Uzushio. Naruto looked at the mask again, and for some strange reason, he realized that the seal was a sort of hinge turned into a seal. Ignoring how he knew that, he channeled his chakra into the seal in order to destroy it, and he succeeded. Yet the small shockwave that came out of the mask also canceled his hinge. Oh my! Hearing Haku's surprised voice, Naruto turned to her only to remain speechless because in front of him there was no longer Unohana Retsu, but a young girl of her age with long black hair that fell down her back, brown eyes full of emotions, and a figure that had nothing to envy to the body of the former captain, even with the clothes of a Shinigami on her. Haku, said Naruto, seeing her nod with a light blush on her face. So, you were also using a hinge? Why yes, I didn't know if you also had a new body or not, so I preferred to use it. Explained Haku, still looking at the much improved body of Naruto. At least compared to his old body when he was still a ninja Konoha, you look good. Even without the beard. Thanks, you two, without the scar on your chest, replied Naruto before looking away with a nervous look. Great. Now why am I talking like this? We've been fighting side by side for hundreds of years, and I've never had trouble talking to her. Shaking his head to get rid of those thoughts, he looked back at the mask, and his expression suddenly turned grim. Haku seemed to notice it, and looking at the mask, her expression also darkened, as the mask they had recovered had changed in appearance. Now, the mouth of the mask was no longer open, but closed with a long series of teeth on display, while the holes for the eyes were now thinner and wider. And finally, the two horns were longer and red, as well as the hair paintings on the forehead. Naruto, that's... Yes, there's no doubt, said Naruto, staring at the mask in his hand. This is a hollow mask, very similar to that used by Kurosaki Ichigo and the other Shinigami who had been deceived by Aizen. What are we going to do? Do you still want to use it? Yes, since we have recovered it, we might as well use it, nodded Naruto before putting it on his face, all the while channeling chakra into it. After a few seconds, the mask detached itself from his face before levitating in front of them, and from it, a strange, violent mist began to come out. In short, the Shinigami formed before their eyes, and the mask fell to the ground. Naruto and Haku stared at their version of that world. They're also Shinigami, so they are staring at a comrade in a sense. But against all expectations, after seeing them, the Shinigami sank to touch the ground with his knees before bowing. Captain Commander Genryūsai Shigekuni Yamamoto, it's an honor to finally meet you. Well, that was unexpected, thought Naruto with a little sweat drop before speaking. You know me? But of course, I am the Shinigami of primitive worlds, know all about the Soul Society and your legend. The Soul King keeps us informed cyclically about the events of the main worlds, so that we know how to react, said the Shinigami with a nod before noticing Haku. Unohana-senpai, forgive me, I didn't see you. Haku was surprised as well. Don't worry, it's no big deal, since you know about me. Do you also know why I'm here? Asked Naruto with a calm voice. Yes, Ichibe Hyasobe sent me a message warning me of your arrival and your mission. The ghostly entity stood up. I am mortified. Because of me, you too have been sent to a world like this to solve my problems. Don't blame yourself. The humans of this world are capable of almost impossible exploits compared to the humans of other worlds, said Naruto while shaking his head. Now, I need to know if you can eliminate the people you brought back to life. Unfortunately, it is impossible for me. The jutsu created by that damn Namikaze prevents me from eliminating them, and I can't even cause their souls to deteriorate. I am practically without power until I am summoned and controlled by that jutsu, explained the Shinigami before showing several seals on his body. They practically sealed me in my turn, and if anyone ever evoked me outside of that Namikaze, I couldn't use my powers. Besides, these damn seals prevent me from talking about Konoha's secrets. Konoha's secrets? Repeated Haku, arching an eyebrow. The Shinigami nodded. Through me, that damn human has done more than bring the dead back to life, but I can't say what. This may be a problem. We don't know what he has in store for us, said Haku before looking at Naruto, who was staring at the Shinigami with serious eyes. I understand. We will now use a powerful form of Kido to seal you. You can continue to reap souls and send them to the circle of rebirth, but you can no longer be summoned by anyone in this world, explained the blonde before looking at Haku. Can you help me? You don't even need to ask, said the woman with a smile before starting to work with Naruto. It took a few hours, but in the end, the Shinigami was wrapped in golden chains that came out of the ground and entered his body. Soon after, several red seals appeared on his body, and a barrier of light formed around him. Finally, the barrier dissolved slowly, and a black iron lock appeared hanging from the band around the waist of the Shinigami. Done. Now you're no more under the control of the humans, nodded Naruto with a satisfied look. Thank you very much, Genryūsai Dano. The Shinigami bowed again. I know that I can't do much, but please accept this gift from me. It will help you in your task. And after that, he touched their foreheads with the point of a finger. After a few seconds, he saw their eyes becoming yellow with black sclera like his own before returning normal. What was that? Asked Haku, looking around before focusing her gaze on the Shinigami. I've just given you what the humans in this world call dojutsu. Just channel your chakra into the eyes to activate it, and it will allow you to recognize those who have been brought back to life, as they will be the only ones to have an aura similar to mine around their bodies, said the Shinigami with a light nod. Thank you, it will be very useful. Naruto nodded back at him before dismissing the Shinigami, who vanished into nothingness, and the mask, used to evoke it, shattered in several pieces. Should we act right away? Asked Haku with Naruto nodding. Yes, it's time for us to send a sign, said the former Captain Commander before using his Shumpo to head toward Konoha, with Haku right behind him. The next day, Konoha? So this is Konoha, asked Haku, walking among the villagers who were celebrating like there was no tomorrow. The sun had just set, and yet many people were already blatantly drunk, yet the cheerfulness in the streets seemed to have no end. Yes, even though it is quite different from when I lived here, said Naruto, again with a hinge over his real body, just like Haku. I guess it's normal and Naruto? I know. They are following us, replied the young man without looking at her. How do you want to act? Asked Haku, looking at some stalls. Tonight will be the time when we will show ourselves to everyone. But first, I think it is better to remove these shadows, that said Naruto with a stern voice. Haku chuckled a bit before nodding. Captain Soifin would definitely be angry at such a poor stealth. And with that, both of them disappeared with a perfect shumpo, reappearing in the middle of a training ground completely desert. They only had to wait a minute before being surrounded by a dozen ANBUs who had already drawn their swords. Genryūsai Shigekuni Yamamoto, you have to come with us. Don't resist, or we'll have to use more violent methods to arrest you, said one of the ANBU with an emotionless voice. Yar. These brats don't really know what education is, sighed Naruto while his eyes turned for a moment black and yellow, especially those who were originally dead. The ANBU didn't react to his words, yet Haku took a step forward. Is it okay if I take care of them? They are targets after all. Naruto eyed his partner for a moment while the ANBU were ready to jump at them. You seem particularly anxious to fight. Is it Yachiru Unohana who's talking? Maybe, said Haku with a cold smile on her face. Or maybe not. It's just that I want to test my old blade. Then, by all means, they are all yours. nodded Naruto without worrying about her or their enemies. At that moment, the ANBU captain ordered his team to attack, but in Haku's eyes, they seemed to go in slow motion. With that scary smile still on her face, she drew her sword. One thing I thought about was that perhaps the command of our Zanpakuto would have been the same. Maybe one day we will be able to find out. Kenpachi Zaraki. As the ANBUs descended on her with their weapons aimed at killing, she lifted her sword horizontally, touching the blade with her free hand. In the darkness of the night, two words echoed in the air. Drink Kubikurobocho. An instant flash was the only thing the ANBU could see before being beheaded. Even before the blood could flow from the neck, 3 other ANBUs suffered the same fate, and only then did the captain realize that the woman they had attacked had vanished into thin air. Where is she? As soon as their feet touched the ground, he and the other ANBU gathered around looking for their opponent, ignoring the corpses of their comrades and Naruto, who was on the sidelines watching the fight, with no intention of intervening. I admit that you are fast, said a cold female voice, shocking all the ANBU, since the voice came exactly from the center of their formation. But not enough. The ANBU captain was the only one to use a Kurama no Jutsu in time to replace himself with a rock, which was cut in half horizontally, like all the other ANBU. The man reappeared nearby, his sword in position to attack, but, just like before, Haku had vanished. Before he could even try to locate her, the edge of a blade was placed against the side of his neck, freezing him on the spot. Congratulations. I thought I was able to kill you with one slash. But apparently your control over the Shinigami didn't soften you at all. The ANBU turned his head slowly and was shocked upon recognizing the sword that had killed all his comrades. The Kubikurobocho, one of the 7 legendary swords of Kiri. When he finally managed to see Haku's face, even with his control of emotions, he couldn't control the chills from seeing her bloodthirsty look. "Who are you?" In response, Haku beheaded him without thinking twice, letting his body fall to the ground like a sack of potatoes. The woman stood still for several seconds until someone put a hand on her shoulder. Turning slightly, she saw the calm, but at the same time, worried eyes of Naruto. "Are you okay?" Haku smiled at him. "Yes, nothing serious." Instead of letting her go, Naruto slightly tightened his grip on her shoulder. As Haku, "I hardly knew you, but I know when Unohana has something that disturbs her." The woman looked back ahead before sighing. "It is the first time in many years that I have felt so euphoric. If we exclude my confrontation with Zaraki Kenpachi, it's been hundreds of years since I last spilled blood so easily. And if we add the fact that this reminds me of the days when Zabuza was still walking on this earth. You're in conflict with yourself, aren't you? You could say that if you remember, I never killed anyone as Haku or as Unohana." After a moment of silence, her Zanpakuto returned to its basic form and Haku sheathed it. "I'm afraid I may have identity problems." "Unlikely," said Naruto without missing a beat, surprising Haku. "You were and are a strong woman. You have all the qualities that have allowed you to become the captain of 2 divisions of the Godai 13 without ever giving way to some challenger. And you have always done your duty with dedication and skill. If there's one thing I know, it's that memories won't break your mind." Haku smiled again, looking back at him. "You've always been good with words. You can call it experience," snorted Naruto. "Now, your Zanpakuto-esque Shirkai is different. Yes, I felt a change in my sword the moment I got the memories of my past lives." "Did it happen to you too?" Naruto shook his head. "No. Even though I now know who my sword really is, Shirkai and Bankai are still the same." Haku seemed confused by his words, but preferred not to dwell further on the subject, and noticed one thing. Those ANBU have been following us since we arrived in Konoha. If there is one thing that is not lacking among their ninja are the sensors and the trackers. It's likely that the first time I came back here, they somehow memorized my chakra, and when I disappeared, Minato must have ordered me to keep an eye on me if I reappeared. Explained Naruto. "Fortunately for me, my chakra is different from 8 years ago." "What about the fox?" asked Haku, since she now knew that Naruto, in his previous life, had been a Jinchuriki. Naruto merely grinned before raising the cane that hit his sword. "Like I said, now I know who my Zanpakuto really is." Finally, Haku understood the meaning of his words and nodded. "Since it's in that form, they cannot locate its chakra." "Exactly. Now I would say that we need to go back." Tonight we will send a message to Minato as well as to all those who approve his choices, said Naruto with Haku nodding at him before disappearing with a shumpo. Flames of Duty. Chapter 4. Declaration of War. We seem to spend most of our time eating, joked Haku while sitting in a restaurant with Naruto in front of her. Before returning to the heart of the village, both had used a spell to erase their presence, including their chakra, thus allowing them to avoid being spotted again by the censors. In addition, knowing that Konoha's ninjas probably also had a picture of Naruto, they had both decided to change hinge, turning into their respective lieutenants who had long served them in the Genryūsai 13. It can't be helped, said Naruto with the appearance of Chojiro apparently. Minato will make an announcement at midnight on the balcony of the Hokage Tower. It seems to be a tradition and nothing new, but it will be the moment when most of the village will be watching him. At that moment, we will act. Sounds good to me, smiled Haku while eating his steak. But when Naruto was about to continue with his meal, a group of people came into the room and those voices caught their attention. Well, nobody is missing, thought Naruto looking at his former friends, plus his two sisters. While he and Haku were walking through the village, they had heard some people talking about those young ninjas to which the Yondaime Hokage's two daughters had joined, dubbing them Konoha 13. Both he and Haku had almost laughed after hearing that nickname, unable to help comparing them to the Genryūsai 13. Haku had even joked that however strong they might be, they were still weaker than the lieutenants of the 13 divisions. This is so boring. Why can't we just take a mission tomorrow? Said Naruto with a sigh. Troublesome. Can't you just rest for a few days? I would do it, replied Shikamaru while sitting between his teammates. Sakura looked at him with, you will rest every day of the year, if only you could. I'm with Naruto this time. Sasuke's unexpected comment arrived. We haven't been on a mission for 4 days. You too, Sasuke-kun? Questioned Sakura with surprised eyes. I thought you liked spending time at home. I like it, but not when my mother starts to wonder when she can have grandchildren to spoil, said Sasuke with a slight blush, mimicked by Sakura who, much to Naruto's surprise, had a wedding ring on her finger just like Sasuke. Well, who would have thought that? The king of the emos got married, said Kurama with a laugh before adding, and with a woman, and I thought that nothing could surprise me anymore. Thought Naruto noticing that even Kiba and Ino had rings, but they didn't seem to be husband and wife. They even sat in two distant parts of the table. The same could not be said for Niji and Tenten, with her having the symbol of the Hyuga clan on her dress. Both have grown up, said Haku looking at Sakura and Sasuke while thinking back at their first encounter. It would seem so, nodded Naruto before eating his food without speaking anymore. After a few minutes, however, Haku spoke to him. What are you thinking about? And don't try to deny the obvious. As you know me, I know you. I was just imagining what would have happened if I hadn't been killed 8 years ago. If my father had really died the night I was born, maybe all this would never have happened, and I would be sitting at that table eating with my comrades, said Naruto before shaking his head. However, you can't change the past, and now that I've lived for so many years as Genryūsai Shigekuni Yamamoto, I wouldn't go back even if I could. Haku smiled at him, nodding at his words, and contrary to what they had done so far, she began to chat with him about things that had happened in their past life. Time seemed to pass quickly while the two former captains ate and talked serenely, ignoring what was happening around them, until it was time to pay and leave. However, just before going out, Naruto glanced quickly at the table where his former comrades and his sisters were sitting and activated the Shinigami's eyes. What he saw pleased him not at all. Naruto called Haku, noticing his eyes. What's wrong? 7 of them. 7 of them have died in the past, said Naruto looking at her with serious eyes. I'll have to kill 7 of my former comrades. Meanwhile, Minato's office. Is it true? Asked Minato looking at the ANBU in front of him. Yes, sir, nodded the ANBU, the team that reported having identified Genryūsai Shigekuni Yamamoto with an unknown woman was found in the training ground 7. All dead, killed by a single sword slash. Minato narrowed his eyes. Hasn't he been found yet? No, sir. It seems to have disappeared into thin air. No chakra residues to follow, no odors of any kind, reported the ANBU. Minato, this is a serious situation, said the Yondaime sensei, leaning against a wall with a serious face for once. Those ANBU were not at all weak, and among them there were also an Uzumaki and an Uchiha. To be killed with a single sword stroke, yes, whoever killed them is very dangerous. Nodded Minato before looking at the village. Any suggestions? In addition to alerting all the Anbu, I would say that you could bring those who were killed back to life, so that you can understand how they died and how strong is this enemy, said Jiraiya with a shrug. Minato nodded before dismissing the masked ninja in front of Hai, after ordering him to alert the other Yanbu teams. Done that, he went into a large underground chamber covered with seals along with his sensei, and after closing the door, started going through a long series of hand signs. This was the special jutsu he had created during the time he was hidden. It was a technique that combined the Edo Tensei, where the Shinigami was summoned so as to obtain the souls of the dead, and the legendary Bambutsu Sozo, creation of all things, where Minato used the Kyuubi's chakra to create a new body around the evoked souls, using the memories of the souls in order to recreate their old bodies. Kuchiyose no Hutsu, Rikuin Kara no Fuki, return from the heavens, shouted Minato before slamming his hands on the ground. However, this time nothing happened. Jiraiya looked at the floor with confused eyes. Minato, is something wrong? I don't know, sensei. Minato was confused as well. I did everything as usual, but nothing happens. And then tried again to use his jutsu several times, failing each time. What's going on? I checked the room seals, and they are all in order. It is possible that something outside this room is interfering with your technique, said Jiraiya with a worried look. Now we can't know how those Anbu died. In fact, I think it was that man who caused all this. He must have found a way to block your jutsu. This is bad. This is really bad. Minato looked back at his master spy. Sensei, I know you've just returned from a mission and you want to relax, but I need you to go out there and help the Anbu. You can count on me, kid. I'll summon some toads to help me. Maybe I'll ask Orochimaru to summon some of his snakes to help me. Nodded Jiraiya before disappearing in a small explosion of white smoke. Left alone, Minato took deep breaths to calm himself. His speech was now only a few minutes away, and he couldn't show himself agitated in front of the civilians. Once the speech was concluded, he would call an emergency council and handle the current situation. Nodding to himself, the Hokage left the room, heading towards the balcony from which he would speak to all of Konoha. Little did he know that Konoha would have received a completely different message from his own. A few minutes after, in the sky above Konoha, "It's starting," said Haku, looking down at the Hokage tower and a huge crowd in the square in front of it. "Will you act immediately?" Naruto, now again with the appearance of Genryūsai Shigekuni Yamamoto, stared down at his father as he walked on the balcony, immediately receiving applause and shouts of joy from the audience. "Yes, I'll let him start his speech, and then I'll gain their attention." Several meters below, Minato raised his arms to silence the crowd, smiling at them all. "I want to start this speech by saying that I am proud of Konoha and of how it is growing nonstop, from all points of view." More applauses and cheers followed his words. For several months now, Konoha has confirmed that it is the strongest and most prosperous village of all, without any war. With the return of our loved ones, now we can only think of an even more radiant future. A future where even the idea of a war is unthinkable. "I'm sorry, Minato, but your bright future will never start," thought Naruto as his wooden staff disappeared, showing his sheathed Zanpakuto. "I will be the fire that will burn that hope." In order for this magnificent future to become reality, we must not stop and believe firmly in our unity and in our strength, the will of fire, shouted Minato with conviction in his voice. And at that precise moment, a small smile on Naruto's face was the one that put Haku on alert, forcing her to move several meters away with a shumpo, just when an overwhelming pressure began to crush the entire village, shocking everyone. Slowly, Naruto drew his sword, sensing Kurama's feeling of anticipation and pleasure. And honestly, he couldn't blame the former Bijou. Powerful flames began to come out of the blade of the sword, and when it was pointed towards the sky, Naruto released its power, with his words echoing through the whole village. "Reduce all creation to ash. Ryujin Jaka." Naruto was suddenly enveloped in its flames, and their light caught the attention of all Konoha. All the ninja, as well as the civilians, looked up in shock, thinking that it was an enemy attack directed towards them. They were almost correct. In the midst of that sea of flames, Minato could barely make out a humanoid figure before a mighty amount of those flames were thrown against the Hokage mountain. hitting his face in full. The impact generated a violent explosion, and everyone saw with horror the stone face of the Yondaime Hokage being destroyed by those flames, while the faces of the Sandaime and the Godaime were heavily burned. The whole thing lasted only a few moments. The flames were lost immediately after destroying the stone face of Minato, leaving a smoldering chasm in its place and black marks on the adjacent faces. Slowly, the pressure that was crushing the entire village became lighter and more bearable, allowing many people who had fallen to their knees to stand up. Everyone looked to the sky, and now that the flames were gone, they were shocked to see an old man standing in the air several meters high. Moments later, a woman dressed more or less like him appeared by his side, watching the crowd below with a calm face. "That's Genryūsai," thought Minato with shocked eyes. "He's flying. Is it possible that he is a relative of the Sandaime Tsuchikage?" "Konoha," said Naruto with a firm tone of voice. "The days when you could play with life and death, ignoring the laws of this world, are over. I was sent here to make sure that what happened in this village never happens again." "Who are you?" shouted Minato, jumping at the top of the Hokage Tower with several ninja appearing at his side. "Have you been sent here from RWA?" "I serve no hidden village," Namikaze Minato. "I serve no one in this world," replied Naruto, before pointing toward the sky with his free hand. "In fact, I serve someone outside this world." Among the crowd, many were left speechless before his declaration, thinking that he had been sent by Kami himself to punish them. "Your Yondaime Hokage has been guilty of unspeakable crimes that have caught the attention of someone far beyond your understanding. It is for this reason that I am here today, and I am sorry to say it, but because of his actions, many of you will lose their lives." Minato narrowed his eyes at him. "What crimes?" "What I did was bringing our loved ones back to life, people who never had the chance to really enjoy life. Thanks to me, no one will ever again try to declare war on us. I gave birth to a period of peace." Naruto saw that many people agreed with his words, and that made him sigh. "You fools." His spiritual pressure suddenly increased, making weaker people faint while others fell to the ground with tears in their eyes and foam coming out of their mouths. "You dared depose to God, controlling life and death as if it were your right. You have no idea what damage you are creating to the precious balance of rebirth with your actions. But I guess you never thought about the consequences of your plans. Isn't that right, father?" Those words seemed to send shivers of shivers down Minato's back. But before he could say anything, both Naruto and Haku were engulfed in white smoke explosions, while reducing the spiritual pressure. When the smoke had cleared, all those present could only stare in shock at the two people who had emerged from the smoke, especially the one who looked like a younger carbon copy of their Hokage, albeit with a scar on his forehead. Among all of them, however, those who had known Uzumaki Naruto in the past looked at him with pale and incredulous faces. Minato, like many others, was left speechless when he saw his son Naruto, though aged. The hope of being able to hug him again began to get bigger and bigger, and taking a step forward, he tried to call him, Naruto. Naruto nodded at him. "It's been a long time, father. 8 years, if I'm not mistaken, even if for me much more time has passed. And that is why I can no longer call myself your son, not that I intended to. However, I could almost thank you. If it wasn't for you and your actions, I wouldn't be here today." Those words seemed to shock Minato. What are you talking about?" "You see, I'm no longer the same Uzumaki Naruto you executed 8 years ago. I am no longer the dead last of the academy that shouted to everyone that he would become Hokage wearing orange clothes," said Naruto with a cold voice. "I am someone completely different, and I was sent here to carry out one and only one mission." He pointed his sword at Minato. "Correct your mistakes and make sure you can never repeat them." Minato paled slightly. "Naruto, you're not saying that, Dash." "Minato, you and all those who have been brought back to life are sentenced to death," Naruto said in a lapidary tone, making many of those present tremble, while others did not seem to take his words well. "What do you mean? Do you think you can come here and threaten our Hokage? He has the power to control death. The Shinigami himself is at his service," shouted a Jonin with several people yelling at Naruto. "As yes, the Shinigami," nodded the blonde before adding, "it can no longer be summoned by anyone." Those words further shocked all those present, while Minato and Jiraiya could only think it was him. "Earlier, some of your ANBU were killed," said Naruto without missing a beat. Your dear Hokage will not be able to bring them back to life, because the Shinigami has been permanently sealed and can no longer be controlled by anyone. Panic began to grow among the crowd, with some not wanting to believe his words. As I said, all those who have been brought back to life by his jutsu will have to die to restore balance in the circle of rebirth. However, I don't want to execute you like any executioner. He raised a finger a week. In a week's time, I will come back here, and I want all those who have been brought back to life gathered outside of Konoha, where they will be purified without any bloodshed. You can't ask us this. I don't know what you had to go through to become like that. But if you're really my son, then you'll know that none of us will give up our lives, shouted Minato. Naruto, please. There's no reason to kill anyone. Come back to us. We can finally be a family. Naruto. The former captain commander looked at Kushina, who had just appeared at her husband's side. Please, come back to us. You have no idea how many times I have dreamed of embracing you. We're a family. Naruto closed his eyes for a moment, with Haku looking at him with worried eyes, but then he looked back at his mother. You're not my family, said Naruto, almost killing Kushina with those words alone. Your son died 8 years ago. I know all about what happened in Minato's plan. My whole life has been nothing but an illusion, and in recent years I have begun to hate illusions with my whole being. He almost growled, thinking back at Aizen. My duty is all that matters. I will complete the mission by order of the Soul King, and none of you will be able to stop me. Ignoring the desperate faces of his former family, Naruto slowly sheathed his sword, just as 3 ANBU appeared behind him and Haku. He turned slightly, noticing the red hair typical of the Uzumaki clan, as well as the pieces of paper covered with seals in their hands, and vanished with a shumpo, reappearing behind them before they could even react. With a speed worthy of a master swordsman, he drew and sheathed his sword, sectioning horizontally the 3 ninjas who, after being divided at the waist, were consumed by flames until they became ashes. Below them, everyone looked horrified at the scene, unable to understand what had just happened. 1 week, said Naruto like nothing has happened. You have a week to decide what to do, but know this. All those who stand between me and my mission will be reduced to ashes. And with those words, he and Haku disappeared with a shumpo. That seemed the signal to make the panic break out among the people gathered in the square, with the civilians who started running in all directions while several ninja headed for the Hokage mountain to see the damage suffered by the monument. Meanwhile, at the top of the Hokage tower, Minato and Kushina continued to observe the spot where Naruto had disappeared. Minato, said Jiraiya, approaching his former student. Was that really my son? Asked Minato, looking at him with teary eyes. Was that really Naruto? Jiraiya sighed, looking up at the sky. The resemblance is undeniable, and although he didn't seem happy to say it, he called you father. He moved his gaze towards Tsunade and Kakashi, who had joined them, both of them with grim faces. And now, he serves someone extremely powerful called Soul King. I've never heard of him, but certainly the flames Naruto used are no joke. What do we do now? Asked Kakashi while looking around, with several people who knew Naruto unable to suggest anything. Minato. Jiraiya placed one hand on his former pupil's shoulder. You heard his voice before the flames appeared, didn't you? Minato could only nod before looking at his sensei. Notify all others. Maybe we'll have to use that to survive this new crisis. I just hope I can reason with Naruto. The man nodded before disappearing along with other ninjas. Minato gave orders to all those present, until only he, Kushina, and their daughters remained. Dad, said Naruto, looking at him with worried eyes. That man was our brother? Minato hugged her and Miwako. I don't know, little princess. I wish it wasn't like that, especially since he wants to kill me and everyone else, and yet he was so similar. He won't kill you, right? He's part of our family, shouted Miwako, looking at him with teary eyes. You're our father. He could never kill you. The man smiled sadly before going to embrace Kushina, who was crying silently. I really don't know. I just hope that all this can be solved without anyone having to die. Maybe in a week we will find an agreement, and you will have your big brother. The 2 girls didn't seem to be so optimistic, but they still embraced their parents while Minato looked again into the sky. He would have laughed if the situation hadn't been so tragic. His son had returned, as he had always wanted, but his purpose was to kill him and all those who had come back to life. Karma really had a distorted sense of humor. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed exploring this What If with me. If you did, please consider leaving a like and subscribing for more videos like this. Your support truly makes a difference, and I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Let me know what you'd like to see next. Until next time, take care and stay tuned for more.